Vallarta and the Guadalajara area. But after El Mencho was killed, we're seeing rival cartels engaging in gun battles throughout the day. We're seeing videos of Mexican special forces engaging and Mexican police on the streets. We're seeing a lot of iPhone video, as you can see here on the screen, some of the aftermath, buses destroyed, airports being targeted, and really a lot of chaos throughout multiple states across Mexico, John.
Yeah, I've seen a jetliner on fire sent by one of my aviation buddies. It's a serious situation. The president has warned that the cartels, you know, are essentially foreign terrorist organizations, and he's talked about potentially sending U.S. forces after them. Doesn't sound like that is happening yet, Lucas.
It hasn't happened yet, but many U.S. special operators have been active along the Mexico-U.S. border, John. And of course, when President Trump came back to office, obviously securing that southern border was a top priority for the president. In fact, something you'll probably hear Tuesday night in the State of the Union about how the border has been locked down. We're not getting illegal aliens coming into the United States. That's something the president has touted many times. But the situation in Mexico is very volatile, as we're reminded of today. You have rival cartel leaders, men who possess billions of dollars. They're engaged in the drug trade, a drug trade that is still active, very flourishing. And they are getting some assistance from the U.S. military in terms of intelligence sharing. And President Trump himself has threatened drone strikes in Mexico. Remember, going back to his first term with Mark Esper, in his memoir, Mark Esper said he was horrified to hear President Trump talk about potentially launching drone strikes into Mexico. Remember, after the Maduro raid, there were some warnings from the White House that if Mexico doesn't get their act together dealing with these cartels, not necessarily something like what happened to Maduro and his wife would be next, but there was a warning: need you, Claudia Sheinbaum, the leader of Mexico, to do more against these drug cartels, and perhaps she was listening, and that was the result of today, John. Yeah,
well, those are horrific images of the burned out buses and other attacks that the cartels have been initiating there just to blow off some steam, and they're taking innocent civilians in the process.
Yeah, turf war.
Yeah, let's hope we do not see that kind of thing.
Mike, what's happening in Mexico right now?
Well, this morning...
We'll have more on the breaking news.
The Mexican army killed the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, on Sunday, decapitating what had become Mexico's most powerful cartel and giving the government its biggest prize yet to show the Trump administration for its efforts. According to Associated Press, Oseguera Cervantes was wounded in an operation to capture him Sunday in Tapalpa, Jalisco, about 2 hours' drive southwest of Guadalajara Sunday, and died while being flown to Mexico City, the Defense Department said in a statement. The state is the base of the cartel known for trafficking huge quantities of fentanyl and other drugs to the United States. During the operation, troops came under fire and killed 4 people at the location. 3 more people, including Oseguera Cervantes, were wounded and later died, the statement said. 2 others were arrested and armored vehicles, rocket launchers and other arms were seized. 3 members of the armed forces were wounded and receiving medical treatment. Videos circulating social media showed plumes of smoke billowing over the tourist city of Puerto Vallarta in Jalisco, and people sprinting through the airport of the state's capital in panic. On Sunday afternoon, Air Canada announced it was suspending flights to Puerto Vallarta due to an ongoing security situation and advised customers not to go to their airport. U.S. had offered up to $15 million for his capture. The U.S. State Department had offered a reward of up to $15 million for information leading to the arrest of El Mencho. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG, is one of the most powerful and fastest-growing criminal organizations in Mexico and was born in 2009. In February, the Trump administration designated the cartel as a foreign terrorist organization.
Verga, loco. Chinga tu madre. No mames.
Блин, похоже, они тут бои ведут. Вот сейчас здесь вот появился еще один этот. Вот, хлопки постоянно идут. То есть, не знаю, надолго ли они тут собрались это все делать.
En este momento se están escuchando balazos aquí en el cruce de Avenida Aviación y Vallarta, en la central camionera. Estamos aquí en la terminal camionera, se están escuchando balazos. Aquí en el cruce de Avenida Aviación y Vallarta, en la central camionera. Estamos aquí en la terminal camionera, se están escuchando balazos.
Métase, Jorge.
No, las casas de viejo se deben de retirar. Con una hilada, ¿verdad? Sí, a veces no se ve nada.
Bueno. Gente corriendo.
Vente más. Corre, 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 corre. Corre, corre, corre.
Quemaron Costco.
This is Dabu 7. You're looking at footage of the Guadalajara airport in Mexico as cartel gunmen have stormed the area and multiple other locations across Mexico. People running for their lives, as you can see right here, out of the back of the Guadalajara airport. This is all in connection to the capture or killing of Mencho. The members that are said to be behind all this are members of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or the CJNG. They apparently stormed this international airport. This is in retaliation for the death of their notorious leader, Nemesio El Mencho Asguera. Now, there was a military operation that was pulled off in downtown, and apparently they took his life. And in response, all hell is breaking loose. People were trapped at the airport. They could not get out. There's plumes of smoke coming up from all over the area. Shots fired inside of the airport. Just literal chaos all over the place. There's many different places that are affected here in this. They even say Puerto Vallarta is affected here. There's people that are being kind of held hostage or can't leave the area because of this. And you can see here on the feeds, when you scroll through the feeds, you can just see plumes of smoke and the same stuff everywhere. They're saying code red.
Here's an update from my previous video. So back again is about an hour and a half later, and there's still fires popping up in Puerto Vallarta. This one here is closer to the church, more near the romantic zone. You can see all the black smoke, lots of fires in the distance. You can see all the white smoke, where some of them have burnt themselves out. So this cartel action has not stopped. Definitely slowed down, but it has not stopped. There's a new fire in front of Lay here, right near the theater in Lay. You can see it there. So that just started up about 20 minutes ago. And there's another one down over here, sort of a smaller one. And then now a new one has started past all the buildings over here, and that's in the hotel zone. You can see where the black smoke is here, all the way to PTL now. The whole sky is dark, so I'm not seeing as many fires. At one point I think I counted 12 or 13 of them. and then they sort of burnt out, but now they are coming again. But I'm not hearing what was possibly gunfire, or most likely would have been just the tires exploding on the cars that were caught on fire. But it has not stopped yet, people. Still going on, so stay in your condominiums and be safe until this is all over. Now I'm seeing another fire just starting over here in front of this black one. This is new. So something's starting up there. Just keeps on moving. So this is my understanding what's going on. I'm going to read something I pulled up off the internet. It says, what happened was El Mencho was captured. El Mencho is the alias for Nemesio Azaguera Cervantes, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. He's a Mexican drug cartel leader and one of the most wanted fugitives in the world. He is the co-founder and top leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, otherwise known as CJNG, a powerful criminal organized based in Guadalajara in the state of Jalisco. Why he's well known: the CJNG grew extremely fast over the last decade and became one of the most dominant criminal groups in Mexico. U.S. authorities, including Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, consider him one of the top international drug traffickers. The U.S. government has offered a multi-million-dollar reward for information leading to his capture. So a little bit of background. Before rising to power, he reportedly worked as a police officer and later became involved with the organized crime group that eventually evolved into the CJNG, the young, I guess what do they call it, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. He's been linked to large-scale drug trafficking and violent conflicts with rival groups and Mexican security forces. If you're asking about, okay, so I think that covers what this guy is all about. If you got any questions, just drop them to me in the comment section of the video, and we'll try to answer them. And as I pick up things, I'll let people know what's going on. But the fires are still going on in the bay, and there's lots of smoke here. I can still see a ship out here. I think this is one of the Navy boats here, sitting in the bay, right there. Just heard a bang. That's probably a tire blowing up from a vehicle. But the whole city is blanketed in smoke, and the wind is good. Fortunately, it's taking it out into the mountains now. But has slowed down, but is definitely not over yet. And I heard that the airports in Puerto Vallarta are currently closed. You can see all the smoke all the way back out of Puerto Vallarta until the colonial or village of PTL as well. Just amazing. Never thought I'd see this in Puerto Vallarta. It's generally left alone. So everybody remain safe. Just ask your questions and I'll try to answer them as much as I know as new information comes up. Lots of fires today in PV. Wow. Fire right in front of the CFE building here. Seems like there's fires all around the city today. I'm not sure what the protest is about.
The company of electricity.
You can see some over there. Seem to be dying off. But this one just started here. There's some fires over there on the 200 apparently. I'm not sure what's going on. This one just started up a moment ago. Hopefully nobody's hurt. Going. You can see all the flames. Lots of banging too. See some fires there in the distance. Over here, at least 3-4 spots over there. Way in the distance, some more. Nearing on the 200 highway. There's another fire on the next corner now. Well, another car's on fire over there. I think it's a car anyways. There's some major protest going on for sure. Hear the fire engines and the police cars now, but they got a lot on their hands for sure. Down there, the fire is still going in the front. Things popping too. I would imagine that's a gas tank going off or something. Almost sounds like gunshots, to be honest.
Gonna dirty the surface of CFE. Did it take any car? There's another fire.
This is Dabu 7. You're looking at footage of the Guadalajara airport in Mexico as cartel gunmen have stormed the area in multiple other locations across Mexico. People running for their lives, as you can see right here, out of the back of the Guadalajara airport. This is all in connection to the capture or killing of Mencho. The members that are said to be behind all this are members of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or the CJNG. They apparently stormed this international airport. This is in retaliation for the death of their notorious leader, Nemesio El Mencho Asguera. Now, there was a military operation that was pulled off in downtown, and apparently they took his life. And in response, all hell is breaking loose. People were trapped at the airport. They could not get out. There's plumes of smoke coming up from all over the area. Shots fired inside of the airport. Just literal chaos all over the place. There's many different places that are affected here in this. They even say Puerto Vallarta is affected here. There's people that are being kind of held hostage or can't leave the area because of this. And you can see here on the feeds, when you scroll through the feeds, you can just see plumes of smoke and the same stuff everywhere. They're saying code red in terms of this, and I'm not sure that the Mexican government is prepared whatsoever to deal with this. We've got word that here within the past week, the U.S. military sent boots on the ground into the area to deal with certain situations, and we may see more of it. This may be where the whole thing with the cartels goes into motion. Remember, Trump made an executive order on day one of this term, and it was against cartels in Mexico specifically. We've seen no big action until right now. This is rather big, and it could escalate. So I'll leave a link. Join me for the live streams going live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, covering this and a whole bunch more. Much love.
Mexican federal forces have killed Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, the founder and leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, or CJNG. The operation took place early Sunday morning, February 22nd, in the town of Tapalpa, Jalisco. In response, cartel members have erected roadblocks and set vehicles on fire across multiple Mexican states. According to high-ranking officials who confirmed the news to Mexican outlet Milenio, the Army-led operation was carried out in the municipality of Tapalpa de Allende, a region in Jalisco that had long been associated with El Mencho. Jalisco Governor Pablo Lemus Navarro confirmed on social media that the federal operation resulted in armed confrontations, and that individuals subsequently burned and blocked vehicles across the region in what he described as an effort to obstruct authorities. The governor activated a statewide Code Red and convened an emergency security committee across all 3 levels of government: federal, state, and municipal. In Puerto Vallarta, more than vehicles have been set on fire at various points across the city. Public transportation has suspended operations throughout the state. Hotels are advising guests to remain indoors, and some businesses have temporarily closed. In Guadalajara, roadblocks have been reported throughout the city, with residents receiving warnings through neighborhood messaging groups to avoid non-essential travel. Michoacan Governor Alfredo Bedolla separately reported that 13 municipalities in his state are experiencing similar unrest. Roadblocks and vehicle burnings have been confirmed across 6 states in total: Jalisco, Michoacán, Colima, Tamaulipas, Guanajuato, and Aguascalientes. El Mencho was born on July 17, 1966, in Naranjo de Chila, in the municipality of Aguililla, Michoacán. He left school in the 6th grade. As a teenager, he migrated to the United States, where he was arrested for drug dealing. In 1992, he and his older brother Abraham were convicted of selling heroin to undercover officers, sentenced to federal prison, and later deported to Mexico. After his deportation, he worked as a local police officer in Tomatlan, Jalisco, before entering the criminal underworld, eventually joining the Milenio Cartel, an organization allied with the Sinaloa Cartel under Ignacio Nacho Coronel. Following Coronel's death in 2010 and the collapse of the Milenio Cartel, El Mencho co-founded the CJNG alongside Eric Valencia Salazar. The organization expanded rapidly across more than a dozen Mexican states. Following the capture of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, Oseguera Cervantes was widely regarded by Mexican and U.S. authorities as the country's most powerful active cartel leader. Mexican security forces are maintaining a visible presence across Jalisco, though authorities have been measured in releasing operational information. The situation across affected states remains active and fluid. Residents in Guadalajara, Puerto Vallarta, and surrounding areas are advised by local authorities to stay home and monitor official channels for updates.
The accused drug lord they call El Mencho is considered in law enforcement circles to be Chicago's public enemy #1. The crime lineage of Al Capone, the most wanted fugitive here since notorious El Chapo was finally captured. Tonight, federal authorities say El Mencho last year fake murdered his own son-in-law, Christian Fernando Gutierrez Ochoa, so that the young man could sneak into Los Angeles and start a new life. Ochoa used $1.2 million in drug money to buy a luxury residence here in Riverside, California, according to federal agents. Ochoa moved into an exclusive neighborhood under the fake name Luis Miguel Martinez, investigators say, after his real persona was supposedly murdered in Mexico by his father-in-law, the ruthless drug lord Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho. Federal agents have been after El Mencho here in Los Angeles and in Chicago for years, as his new generation cartel, known as CJNG, has been making violent inroads to the illicit drug trafficking markets in both cities. And the Kin murder story made sense. Mencho accused of killing close associates in cartel squabbles. So when he claimed to have killed his own son-in-law for lying, Ochoa's cover here in Los Angeles worked, until it didn't.
I think the guy arrested probably was operating with some level of comfort, thinking that his faked death in Mexico, which the Mexican authorities apparently bought, had worked for him here.
37-year-old Ochoa being held tonight here at the Federal Detention Center in Los Angeles, arrested after facial recognition from an Interpol photo matched up with the bogus identity in L.A. Ochoa is married to this woman, El Mencho's daughter, Laisha Michelle Osagura Gonzalez, an American citizen who runs a Southern California coffee shop, according to authorities. Also bought, they say, with cash they suspect was from a cartel-run tequila manufacturer south of the border. El Mencho himself remains Chicago's most wanted and currently has a $10 million bounty on his head. El Mencho is the real target for U.S. law enforcement tonight. The head of the Drug Enforcement Administration says he is behind the wave of corruption and killings in Mexico that has left thousands shot dead in the streets in recent years, and the mayhem here. And each arrest of someone close to El Mencho, authorities believe they are squeezing him to surface or to make a mistake that will result in his own arrest or death. He's really the guy they want.
Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, the leader of CJNG, is still at large today.
The subject of a manhunt by the federal government, now with a $15 million reward for his capture.
He's a person that we would consider as public enemy number one.
They say that in Mexico, you can disappear without leaving a trace, but there are those who learn to do it without running, without hiding, simply erasing themselves from the map until they become a ghost with power. That is the case of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho. A name that causes silence, a surname few dare to pronounce out loud, and a presence that, ironically, has been built from absence. In Mexico, there is something very clear among the civilian population. You must not get involved with criminal organizations under any circumstance, and this has been demonstrated for years through cases that have shocked the country and much of the world. Today, while his organization continues operating across different states, while the authorities claim to have been close to catching him, and while his figure dominates headlines and investigation files, he is not there. He does not appear on camera. He gives no interviews. He leaves no recent photos. No verified rumors circulate about him, only shadow. Something similar to what happened with Ismael Zambada Garcia, El Mayo. El Mencho is nowhere, and even so, he is everywhere. A powerful sentence without the intention of glorifying, but one that explains the situation of this criminal. And the truth is that very little is known about this man. His photographs are few, and when it comes to videos, they simply do not exist. But how is that possible? How can a man for whom a reward of $10 and $15 million has been offered, who has been at the top of the DEA's 10 most wanted list, seem as if he never existed? Several of his family members have been arrested, but he seems to have disappeared from the face of the earth. On YouTube, there are countless videos claiming his supposed death, or that he appeared in some place, or an alleged last phone call. The reality is that many of those headlines are created for clicks and truly lack veracity. He was born on July 17, 1966, in a town southwest of Michoacán with his 5 siblings, Naranjo de Chila. Ruben Oseguera came from a family whose main activity was avocado production. He left school when he was only in 5th grade. It was then that he began working with the Valencia family, a powerful and wealthy family dedicated to the production and sale of that fruit. A family that, over time, would become known as the Avocado Cartel. This nickname referred to the fact that they trafficked marijuana hidden among avocado shipments. From that operation, the now extinct Milenio Cartel was born, founded by Armando Valencia Cornelio, also known as El Maradona. El Mencho started at the bottom, being a teenage lookout on plantations. By 1986, he decided to migrate to the United States, living in the San Francisco Bay Area. The San Francisco police arrested him at the age of 19 for the first time on U.S. soil for carrying stolen items and a loaded firearm. According to border records, Mencho may have crossed the border several times during the 1980s. In 1989, he was arrested again, this time for selling narcotics. Because of this, he was deported to Mexico. But Mencho did not settle for that. He decided once again to cross the border to return to the United States. In September of 1992, Mencho was arrested again, this time with his brother Abraham, both charged with drug-related offenses in Sacramento, California. At that time, Oseguera Cervantes was 26 years old. 3 weeks later, they they were arrested and prosecuted for drug trafficking in the United States. Mencho initially insisted on his innocence and was about to declare himself not guilty, but eventually he decided to plead guilty. After his release, Mencho returned permanently to Mexico and joined the municipal police in Tomatlan, Jalisco, but not with the intention of enforcing the law. Instead, from within, he strengthened ties with the Nava Valencia brothers, members of the Milenio Cartel. He became part of the squad of hitmen that protected Armando Valencia Cornelio, leader of the criminal organization. Mencho was always known as an intelligent and reserved person. He became key in trafficking substances into the United States, thanks to his contacts and experience in the neighboring country. But that organization did not last long. In 2003, El Maradona, its top leader, was arrested. From that moment, the organization began to fall apart, receiving blow after blow. One of its main enemies were Los Zetas, one of the most powerful groups of that time, acting as the armed wing of the Gulf Cartel. With so much pressure from Los Zetas, a group that during that period was lethal, with members who were ex-military men, Mencho and the Milenio Cartel had to take refuge in Guadalajara, Jalisco. Then, they joined a Sinaloa cartel subgroup led by Nacho Coronel, uncle of Emma Coronel, wife of El Chapo Guzman. That is how they managed to hold on until 2009, when their leader Oscar Orlando Nava Valencia was arrested. 1 year later, his brother Juan Carlos, El Tigre, was also captured. 2 months after that, Coronel was killed in a shootout with the Mexican army. At that point, it was evident that the Milenio Cartel was reduced to ashes and condemned to disappear. Mencho, by this time, wanted to take command of the organization, but one faction wanted to appoint Pidio Mojaro, El Pilo, as the new leader, someone who had worked closely with the previous bosses. On the other hand, there was Eric Valencia Salazar, L85, who suggested that Oseguera Cervantes should keep that position. With Coronel dead, the organization no longer had the support of the Sinaloa cartel. This is when one of the most well-known cartel wars in Mexican history began. The group split into two factions.
Mike, what's happening in Mexico right now?
Well, this morning...
Hello, welcome. I'm Nomia Iqbal. In Mexico, the army has confirmed the death of one of the country's most feared drug lords, known as El Mencho, caught and killed in a dawn raid. He was killed in an operation in the town of Telpapa. The U.S. had previously issued a $15 million reward for the capture of the co-founder and leader of the Jalisco New Generation drugs cartel. It's feared for its use of extreme violence. Violence broke out in the country as a result of his killing. Suspected members of the cartel began burning dozens of cars and trucks in the state and a neighboring state as the army moved in, possibly to try to delay the operation. Our Latin America correspondent Will Grant joins us now from Mexico. Good to have you with us, Will. First of all, for people who might not know anything about El Mencho, who was he?
He was crucial, Nami. I mean, we often talk in Mexico about kingpins and drug lords and so on. This was one of the very, very biggest. In this particular moment in time, the most wanted man in Mexico, by some distance, I would say. The feared leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, which is a vast criminal organization which traffics tons and tons of methamphetamine, cocaine and fentanyl into the United States, responsible for scores of murders a year. And, you know, one of those who really underpins the criminal underworld in this nation. Of course, it's a major victory on some level for the authorities here, for the military who killed him in a raid, injured him initially, and then he died en route to Mexico City. But of course, we're seeing the unfolding violence that goes with that, as his organization is extremely powerful and very, very well armed.
Now, National Guard have been deployed outside the Attorney's office after that killing. Just showing some live pictures there in Mexico City of the National Guard outside the office. And Will, just give us a sense of what happens when leaders are taken out, this sort of kingpin strategy. You know, does it work? Is it something that, what happens as a result of it?
It can have an impact. I mean, somebody like El Mencho, these organizations can be quite top-heavy in the sense that an individual leader can be an important, more than just a cog in a bigger machine. They are leaders for that very reason. They lead troops, they lead men, and they bring strategy to the table. That said, where one leader falls, another is invariably ready to take his place or her place. There are important women in drug trafficking too, but it is key that when one falls, there's generally people beneath him to replace him. We'll see what happens in this particular instance. It is interesting, this degree of violence and how quickly it's unfolded, and a real challenge for law enforcement in cities across Mexico. And let's just mention some of those cities. They include Guadalajara, the state capital, important cultural center in Mexico. They include, and going to be a host city of the FIFA World Cup this summer. They include Puerto Vallarta, a very, very important tourist hotspot in the country where potentially thousands of tourists currently holed up. So, you know, this is a major moment in sort of drug war history in Mexico.
And Will, I think we're still trying to work out, you might actually know more than I do, if the US were involved in any capacity in this operation, but nonetheless, I imagine that this will be seen as a victory by President Trump, the death of someone as significant as El Mencho.
Yeah, I mean, what we're hearing from the Mexican embassy in the United States is that there was US involvement in terms of intelligence work, and giving it that sort of slight sense of a joint operation in that regard. But my understanding is that what unfolded on the ground was a Mexican military raid that led to the death of El Mencho, but with intelligence supports from the United States. We'll doubtless hear more during the week, particularly once President Claudia Sheinbaum has her early morning press briefing on Monday. But you're right, this will be played as a victory, I think, on both sides of the border, with Donald Trump pushing, since he returned to office, for greater action to take place against Mexican cartels.
Thank you so much, Will. Good to talk to you. That's Will Grant there, our Latin America correspondent. Chris Dolby is a policy analyst, journalist, and author of a book about the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. It's called CNJG, Quick Guide to Mexico's Deadliest Cartel. And he told us more about the leader of the organization.
El Mencho was, without any competition, Mexico's deadliest and most influential drug trafficker. He is on the level of El Chapo or Pablo Escobar for his role in the international drug trade. He was also the founder of the CJNG, which for the last 15 years, he ruled with an almost cult of personality level of leadership. And his death leaves an enormous vacuum, which I fear will be filled with even more drug violence across Mexico.
Well, this is the fear, isn't it? That if you take out the leader, it just triggers more violence and fragmentation. Do you think that is likely to happen now? I mean, what is the benefit of taking someone out like that?
Without a doubt, El Mencho was responsible directly and indirectly for the violent death of thousands of people, and he needed to be brought to justice. However, the kingpin strategy, as you rightfully say, has a major flaw. When you remove the top dog, his lieutenants are going to fight more aggressively against each other to slice up the criminal empire. And the CJNG had one hell of a criminal empire, from drugs to illegal mining to oil theft to migrant smuggling to extortion. There's a lot for people to fight over. And El Mencho, as I said, had this sort of iron grip over the CJNG for 15 years. There was no talk of a successor. There was no talk of someone picked to be his heir. There are 4, 5, 6 different leaders, each with significant ground across Mexico, each with a lot of troops under their command, and I'm not aware of any one of them having the ability to take over where El Mencho left.
We're just seeing some pictures now of the aftermath of the operation. As I mentioned, suspected members of the cartel burnt dozens of cars and trucks in Jalisco and neighboring state as the army was moving in. Just bringing you back into this, Chris, in terms of, you know, the US they weren't involved in the operation, as my understanding is, but nonetheless, his killing it could be seen as some sort of prize to President Trump. We know there's been months of pressure over fentanyl and you know, designating drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. Would you characterize that as a win for the US?
It's certainly going to be played that way by Donald Trump and his administration. El Mencho was a highly recognizable drug leader. He's been named as a terrorist. He was one of the most wanted men by the Department of Justice with a bounty of $50 million on his head. So removing him is going to be played by the US as, look at what Mexico does when we force them to play ball with us. And the narco blockades, as you described, that's fairly standard. When a leader of this magnitude is killed or captured, you do see a lot of violence in the area around his capture. What worries me is what happens a week, a month, a year down the line when the fallout of all this happens. From what we've seen from the US and Mexican discussions recently, that hasn't really factored in. It really has been all about the PR value of capturing or killing these very well-known kingpins.
Chris Dolby there. Just to let you know, the US Department of State has issued a shelter-in-place warning for US citizens in various states in Mexico, specifically Jalisco. The former US ambassador to Mexico and the Deputy Secretary of State, Christopher Lando, has described El Mencho on social media as one of the bloodiest and most ruthless drug kingpins. He added that his death was a great development for Mexico, the US, Latin America, and the world, and we'll keep you across that story as it develops.
Mike, what's happening in Mexico right now?
Well, this morning, the Mexican army located Nemesio Ceguera Cervantes, better known as El Mencho, the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel in the municipality of Talpa de Allende. This is where he spends a lot of time and where he hides. So this was one of the most significant actions undertaken in the history of drug trafficking, because we're talking about someone that is almost at the same level as Chapo Guzman and El Mayo Zambada. He's one of the biggest drug capos in the history of drug trafficking around the globe. And his cartel operated very much like a paramilitary force. And they operated in about 6 of the 7 continents around the world. But not only were they involved in cocaine, heroin trafficking, but they were also major players in the traffic of synthetic drugs, such as fentanyl, methamphetamine. They imported precursor chemicals, not only from China, but also from India through the port of Lázaro Cárdenas in Michoacán. But they also diversified their criminal activities to include the penetration of the avocado industry, the lemon lime industry, the theft of lumber, penetration of the fishing industry. And then they were also involved in the theft of petroleum from Pemex pipelines.
Mike, can you explain to me clearly, this was a Mexican-led operation, but what role did U.S. intelligence have in an operation, or what role does U.S. intelligence have typically in an operation such as this?
Sometimes they provide information. Excuse me. Sometimes we have law enforcement agencies that operate in Mexico, such as DEA, FBI, and others. And in Mexico, we have a huge apparatus of informants that we've been able to cultivate through decades. And sometimes they provide information. That information will now go to the Mexican authorities, and then they may act on that information. But in this case, I think the vast majority of the intelligence came from Mexico's security apparatus. And they did a magnificent job in executing the operation, because El Mencho had rings of security, literally an army of security that protected him. So I think that it was a combination of ground forces and then also supported by air support in the form of helicopters armed with high caliber machine guns, such as 50 caliber machine guns.
The response by the cartel has been violent. Can you talk about what we're seeing in Mexico right now?
Right now, we're seeing reprisals on the part of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. They are burning buses, they're shutting down roads, not only in Jalisco, but Michoacan, Colima, Tamaulipas, Guanajuato, and then also Aguascalientes. And what they're trying to do is show that they are still a force to be reckoned with. That, this was not a lethal blow to them. So that's what they're trying to do is show that they're still, in charge.
We've seen that operations at certain airports have been interrupted. Have you heard anything about that or know anything about that?
Yeah, there's some airports that have basically limited operations. Why? Because you'll recall on the second capture of Ovidio Guzman, the cartel went to, for example, to the airport in Culiacan and started shooting at commercial airlines landing at the airport. So they're afraid that they may attack commercial airliners and put people in jeopardy if they don't shut down the operation. So that's basically what they're doing.
The Mexican army killed the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, on Sunday, decapitating what had become Mexico's most powerful cartel and giving the government its biggest prize yet to show the Trump administration for its efforts. According to Associated Press, Oseguera Cervantes was wounded in an operation to capture him Sunday in Tapalpa, Jalisco, about 2 hours' drive southwest of Guadalajara Sunday, and died while being flown to Mexico City, the Defense Department said in a statement. The state is the base of the cartel known for trafficking huge quantities of fentanyl and other drugs to the United States. During the operation, troops came under fire and killed 4 people at the location. 3 more people, including Oseguera Cervantes, were wounded and later died, the statement said. 2 others were arrested and armored vehicles, rocket launchers and other arms were seized. 3 members of the armed forces were wounded and receiving medical treatment. Videos circulating social media showed plumes of smoke billowing over the tourist city of Puerto Vallarta in Jalisco, and people sprinting through the airport of the state's capital in panic. On Sunday afternoon, Air Canada announced it was suspending flights to Puerto Vallarta due to an ongoing security situation and advised customers not to go to their airport. U.S. had offered up to $15 million for his capture. The U.S. State Department had offered a reward of up to $15 million for information leading to the arrest of El Mencho. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG, is one of the most powerful and fastest-growing criminal organizations in Mexico and was born in 2009. In February, the Trump administration designated the cartel as a foreign terrorist organization.
Verga, loco. Chinga tu madre. No mames.
Блин, похоже, они тут бои ведут. Вот сейчас здесь вот появился еще один этот. Вот, хлопки постоянно идут. То есть, не знаю, надолго ли они тут собрались это все делать.
En este momento se están escuchando balazos aquí en el cruce de Avenida Aviación y Vallarta, en la central camionera. Estamos aquí en la terminal camionera, se están escuchando balazos. Vamos.
Métanse, Jorge. Vamos. Métanse, Jorge.
No, las casas de viejo se deben de retirar. Con una hilada. Y a veces no sabe nada.
¿Cuál?
Corriendo.
Vente más. Corre. Corre. Llevaron Costco.
We'll have more on the breaking news out of Mexico. The U.S. Embassy issuing a shelter-in-place order for Americans in areas around Mexico City and the resort town of Puerto Vallarta after the Mexican army says it killed a prominent cartel kingpin known as El Mencho. You're looking at some of the response, apparently, of the cartel members who have been torching vehicles and even airplanes in the Guadalajara area. Let's bring in Lucas Tomlinson from the White House. Lucas.
Well, good afternoon, John. So far, there's been no reaction from the White House about the series of ongoing gun battles that we are witnessing in Mexico after, as you mentioned, the drug kingpin and cartel leader El Mencho was killed by Mexican forces. We've heard from the Pentagon that the Joint Interagency Task Force Counter Cartel did assist Mexican forces, not likely with boots on the ground, John, but with intelligence sharing. But after El Mencho has been killed, we've seen a series of warfare, frankly, going on across Mexico. In Puerto Vallarta, in Guadalajara, we saw images from the airport. And of course, thousands of American tourists visit Mexico throughout the year, certainly during the winter months in the United States. And right now, the State Department is warning all Americans in Mexico to shelter in place, particularly in Puerto Vallarta and the Guadalajara area. But after El Mencho is killed, we're seeing rival cartels engaging in gun battles throughout the day. We're seeing videos of Mexican special forces engaging in Mexican police on the streets. We're seeing a lot of iPhone video, as you can see here on the screen, some of the aftermath, buses destroyed, airports being targeted, and really a lot of chaos throughout multiple states across Mexico, John.
Yeah, I've seen a jetliner on fire sent by one of my aviation buddies. It's a serious situation. The president has warned that the cartels, are essentially foreign terrorist organizations, and he's talked about potentially sending U.S. forces after them. Doesn't sound like that is happening yet, Lucas.
It hasn't happened yet, but many U.S. special operators have been active along the Mexico-U.S. border, John. And of course, when President Trump came back to office, obviously securing that southern border was a top priority for the president. In fact, something you'll probably hear Tuesday night in the State of the Union about how the border has been locked down. We're not getting illegal aliens coming into the United States. That's something the president has touted many times. But the situation in Mexico is very volatile, as we're reminded of today. You have rival cartel leaders, men who possess billions of dollars. They're engaged in the drug trade, a drug trade that is still active, very flourishing. And they are getting some assistance from the U.S. military in terms of intelligence sharing. And President Trump himself has threatened drone strikes in Mexico. Remember, going back to his first term with Mark Esper, in his memoir, Mark Esper said he was horrified to hear President Trump talk about potentially launching drone strikes into Mexico. Remember, after the Maduro raid, there were some warnings from the White House that if Mexico doesn't get their act together dealing with these cartels, not necessarily something like what happened to Maduro and his wife would be next, but there was a warning. Need you, Claudia Sheinbaum, the leader of Mexico, to do more against these drug cartels, and perhaps she was listening, and that was the result of today, John.
Yeah, well, those are horrific images of the burned out buses and other attacks that the cartels have been initiating there just to blow off some steam, and they're taking innocent civilians.
Hello, I'm Linda Ward. Welcome inside the CBC Newsroom. We begin with breaking news on a wave of violence erupting in Mexico. Ottawa is asking all Canadians in Puerto Vallarta to shelter in place following clashes between federal authorities and criminal groups. The violence was sparked by the killing of a powerful drug cartel leader. Puerto Vallarta's international airport has been affected. Canadian Airlines canceling all flights into the city, with some planes even turning around mid-flight. Global Affairs estimates almost 19,000 Canadians are registered as being in Mexico, including over 4,500 in Jalisco State. Ottawa says it is continuing to closely watch the rapidly evolving security situation for Canadians. In a statement, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says the safety and security of Canadians abroad remains our highest priority, and it is for this reason that we are issuing an updated travel advisory. She says global affairs officials are in close contact with local authorities and partners and stand ready to provide consular assistance to Canadians in the region. For more on this volatile situation that's unfolding right now, we're joined by journalist Katie Silver in Mexico City. Katie, certainly a situation that's very much in flux. Can you tell us a little bit about what started all this and the killing of this cartel leader?
Yeah, so it began early this morning. Police, or the military army, in fact, targeted Nemesio Osquera, known as El Mencho, which is the drug king, the leader of this group, this Jalisco New Generation Cartel. We understand it happened in the early hours of this morning. It was an operation initially to recover him, but we understand that what ensued was shooting. Residents, for example, nearby described the sounds of this shooting. He was then airlifted, injured, we understand, brought here towards Mexico City, but actually died on the way. He's among 7 people that died. We understand as well police injured, as well as others remain injured in hospital as well. This is what one resident had to say, what they could hear as the shooting occurred.
We started hearing a series of really loud booms and also what sounded like gunshots, and it turned out both were true. Very surreal in that there was constant explosion, constant siren sounds, but
Now, we also understand that the US was involved in terms of intelligence gathering. We heard, for example, from the Mexican embassy in Washington posting on X. They said that in addition to central military intelligence efforts, complementary information was provided by US authorities within the framework of bilateral coordination and cooperation with the United States. Now, in terms of how the situation is on the ground, we understand as well that we've already seen violence from the cartels in retribution, particularly when it comes to burning out cars, seen as a way, for example, of blocking roads and preventing further military operation. We're also hearing about the sound of gunshots as well. And the US Embassy, for its part, warning citizens to shelter in place as far away as Cancun, which is the other side of the country. So this does seem to be indeed a very volatile situation and something that has been spreading across Mexico this afternoon.
And Katie, what is the Jalisco cartel? How much of a danger do they pose?
They're very significant. They started back in 2009. Earlier this year, President Trump declared them as a terrorist organization. They are seen as performing spectacular attacks with drones, rockets, grenades. Just back in, for example, in 2020, they performed a very significant attack here in the capital city, trying to bring down the head of police of the state. A very significant operation. We understand as well a $15 million reward was placed on the head of El Mencho by the US authorities, about $20 million reward from the Mexican government as well. So it has been seen as a very significant group responsible for trafficking huge quantities of drugs into the US, including fentanyl, cocaine, and methamphetamine.
Katie, how are people there feeling about all of this and what might come next?
I'd say there's really a feeling of trepidation. We've already seen, for example, people taking to the streets as far away as Sinaloa, warning about the potential dangers of this. We've heard as well from Mexico's leader, Claudia Sheinbaum, previously saying that these attacks on the heads of cartels can sometimes then lead to more fractured groups, and that can therefore exacerbate violence further. So there's a lot of fear, a lot of trepidation, and really, as I say, great quantities of people across the country having to shelter in place, not leave their homes as well. The tourist city of Puerto Vallarta, for its part, for example, all ride hailing completely ceased. So there is certainly a sense of fear really here at the moment.
Katie, thanks very much for your reporting on this. That's journalist Katie Silver in Mexico City. And we now have Nancy Sutton joining us. We've reached her vacationing just north of Puerto Vallarta. Nancy, we know you're from Canada. They're currently locked down. What's going through your mind right now?
Well, it came out as quite as a shock. We were all Canadians in a pub of 200-300 people, and we were about to take a bus about an hour north here to visit friends in San Pancho. And as we got down to near the highway, we noticed a bit of disruption, but it wasn't until we got on the little bus, this lovely Mexican bus driver said to us, and he grabbed our phone to talk Google Translate and said, "Turn around, go home." So we got off the bus and crossed the street, and we made our ways back to our condo, our hotel area. And it was kind of scary because there was no way to get back. I can't tell you how many Mexicans stopped and said to us, danger, danger, go back, and grabbed their phones telling us to get out of the area because we were right on the highway where we've heard there is still some cars burning there.
Well, thank goodness for those Mexicans telling you through Google Translate what you needed to do. What are you hearing now about how safe you are where you are?
Well, it's normally a very safe area. My husband and I have been coming down here for years, and we're with friends that have been here for 10 years. And my heart goes out to the people that work here and the restaurants because they're all incredibly kind and helpful people normally. And they have assured us nothing like this has ever happened to them. And we're just getting a little bit nervous just because we can see the smoke. And out our patio window here, it's normally a very, very busy street, like a White's Avenue in Edmonton or Eglinton Avenue in Toronto. And I haven't heard or seen a car in about 10 minutes.
My goodness. And this all came upon you so suddenly. Have you had a chance to think about, your plan, what you're going to do? Are you going to stay where you are? Are you going to move elsewhere? Are you going to, have you heard anything about, any plans to get back to Canada, which we know right now we're hearing about flights being canceled?
Well, that's certainly a bit of a concern now. My husband and I just retired, so we had planned to be here till mid-March. So I think we have to get our heads around that. Right now, as you can appreciate, all the grocery stores are closed, all the restaurants are closed. They've sent all their staff home. So we're just kind of getting our heads around that. Do we have enough food in our refrigerator, enough water? And we have registered with the government. The federal government, and we're just hoping the best. The other comment I want to say is there's a statistic here in Nuevo Vallarta, which is a very new, safe area. We walk the streets, and they say that it's 87% Canadians in this area. And in the condo that we're staying at, I've only met one American couple. Everyone is Canadian from across the country.
So many Canadians in Mexico right now. And I guess a lot of the questions that you have there about your next steps have to do with how long this is going to go on for. Has anybody who lives there given you any indication of what they expect in terms of, how long this might last?
No, I think one of the, we just heard my girlfriend and her husband just had lunch before the restaurant closed down. And they were just so apologetic and said nothing like this has ever happened. So in this area, this is all chartered, uncharted waters, and no one seems to understand what could possibly be next.
Well, we are glad that you're safe, Nancy. Not
Thank
what
you.
you expected for your vacation, I'm sure. But please stay safe and stay in touch with us as you can.
Will do. Thank you.
Nancy Sutton, currently on vacation in Mexico, just north of Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, welcome. I'm Nomia Iqbal. In Mexico, the army has confirmed the death of one of the country's most feared drug lords, known as El Mencho, caught and killed in a dawn raid.
Mike, what's happening in Mexico right now?
Well, this morning, the Mexican army located the Mencho.
The Mexican army killed the leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho, on Sunday, decapitating what had become Mexico's most powerful cartel and giving the government its biggest prize yet to show the Trump administration for its efforts. According to Associated Press, Oseguera Cervantes was wounded in an operation to capture him Sunday in Tapalpa, Jalisco, about 2 hours' drive southwest of Guadalajara Sunday, and died while being flown to Mexico City, the Defense Department said in a statement. The state is the base of the cartel known for trafficking huge quantities of fentanyl and other drugs to the United States. During the operation, troops came under fire and killed 4 people at the location. 3 more people, including Oseguera Cervantes, were wounded and later died, the statement said. 2 others were arrested and armored vehicles, rocket launchers and other arms were seized. 3 members of the armed forces were wounded and receiving medical treatment. Videos circulating social media showed plumes of smoke billowing over the tourist city of Puerto Vallarta in Jalisco, and people sprinting through the airport of the state's capital in panic. On Sunday afternoon, Air Canada announced it was suspending flights to Puerto Vallarta due to an ongoing security situation and advised customers not to go to their airport. U.S. had offered up to $15 million for his capture. The U.S. State Department had offered a reward of up to $15 million for information leading to the arrest of El Mencho. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel, known as CJNG, is one of the most powerful and fastest-growing criminal organizations in Mexico and was born in 2009. In February, the Trump administration designated the cartel as a foreign terrorist organization.
Verga, loco. Chinga tu madre. No mames.
Блин, похоже, они тут бои ведут. Вот сейчас здесь вот появился еще один этот. Вот, хлопки постоянно идут. То есть, не знаю, надолго ли они тут собрались это все делать.
En este momento se están escuchando balazos aquí en el cruce de Avenida Aviación y Vallarta, en la central camionera. Estamos aquí en la terminal camionera, se están escuchando balazos. Aguas, aguas, aguas.
Métanse, Jorge.
Aguas, aguas, aguas.
No sabe nada.
¿Cuál? Gente corriendo.
Vente más. Corre, 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 corre.
Allá los mostradores abajo. A los
Corre, corre, corre.